Hello and welcome to Trying Times. My name's Carmen, and if you're new here or if you're returning, this is going to be the last episode of Trying Times for 2024. I took an unnecessarily dramatic pause there, but I don't know. Did I get you for a second? Because it's not the last episode of Trying Times. It's just the last episode of Trying Times for this year, for 2024. So I wanted to do something a little bit different than what I normally do. And I know for the last few months, I've been doing a lot of different stuff with this show, with the format, with the subject matter, with a lot of different stuff. And it's fun to experiment. And that's kind of what brought me to create this show. So to be able to experiment with it and change things around and see what I enjoy and see what I don't enjoy, and also get to see that through you guys and what you guys like listening to and what you might not be enjoying so much is really cool to me. So it's something I really love. And also, I just want to add that on the topic of me doing something different, and also this being the last episode, I'm very aware we still have one full month of 2024. We still have the entirety of December. Normally, I end the show somewhere in the midpoint of December as the final month of the year, as the final episode of the year. But this year, I wanted to do it a little bit differently because I have a little bit of a different plan for next year and for this show and for the format. So I thought that I would probably give myself December, not only obviously to be able to be around loved ones and just, enjoy time and try to be mindful, but also to try to plan to the best of my abilities while I have the chance to before next year starts. Because I feel like every year we go through the holidays and it kind of turns into this point in time where it's like a limbo where everybody's on, very different fluctuating schedules. And it's very easy to kind of forget routine, just like go into the flow of the holidays fully as you should, as everybody deserves to, if you're able to, and if you're, lucky enough to have that. But so I wanted to take the time out properly to plan and to give myself that time to get excited and ramped up for next year. So that's that. But I will be mentioning a little bit more about what I plan to do with Trying Times for next year at the end of this episode. So if you do want to stick around and hear about that, then you'll have to stay tuned till the end of the episode. But the idea of what I've been wanting to do with this show hasn't really been able to be clear and concise because all these things are kind of best achieved, I think, through doing, because then by doing, you learn. And something like this obviously is going to start off one way and potentially take a turn. And I never really wanted to have too many rules around it because that can also kind of take away some of the fun. But basically, I had a really wonderful idea come to me a few months ago. And I was like, okay, we can test this out and see how it goes. So that'll kind of be, I want to say, the next few months for this show, if not the entirety of 2025. We will see how it goes. These things change day to day, but I'm excited to experiment and see. So I'll get more into that later. For the sake of this episode and celebrating 2024, I wanted to look at this as a roundup of this year. Kind of like what Spotify does with its wrapped feature at the end of every year, but I'm not going to go through every single episode and tell you what about this show that you liked listening to because everybody likes listening to different stuff and you know what you like best. But I more so wanted to dive into the different kinds of themes that I noticed throughout the year and what I noticed you guys seem to find the most relatable or interesting or fun or whatever or all of the above. Okay? So that's kind of what I was thinking of doing with this one. And I wanted to sum up some of the things that I noticed heavily and also share, I guess, a bit of my perspective behind each episode that I will be mentioning. So I'll start by saying that we made it through another year. Yes, I know we still have a month, but I have no doubt that we can get through it. I think 2024, as along with any other year, has a lot of really strange events that have come up. Really strange events, very potentially maybe exciting events, very unfortunate events, very infuriating events. There's a lot that's been going on. Every single year that passes, I feel like there's always that whole phrase of like, oh, I didn't see this popping up on my insert year here bingo card. There was a lot of things I can honestly say I don't think I ever really anticipated popping up on my 2024 bingo card, but we are where we are now, and we've made it through that time, mostly. So that's something. We made it through another year, another trip around the sun, and we definitely learned more lessons along the way. I think sometimes when we think of this idea, or at least for me, of reflecting upon a year, I automatically hop into looking at all the things that I've achieved or the things that I've been able to do above any other topic in my head or above any other thing or milestone, whatever you might want to call it. But I think what I'm learning as I get older, and this is going to sound very cliche, is that when you're learning something new or you're trying something new, you're always excited. I'm speaking for myself. I'm saying you. Me personally, I'm always excited for the outcome to see how it's going to go or how I'm going to feel at the end of it. But what I'm starting to realize is that everything I'm learning along the way is usually far more enriching than whatever it is that I get through at the end. So, I want to say that the lessons learned along the way are probably, in my opinion at least, more important than any sort of achievements or anything that you might have tried. Because I think a lot of the time when we try something and we don't really fully get into it or we feel like we've failed, we automatically default to, well, it was whatever. I wasn't able to achieve that. No, you still tried. You did the thing. And even if you do something and you achieve it and you feel good about it, don't forget about all the wonderful things that you're able to learn along the way. Maybe not so wonderful too, but I feel like all in all, these things kind of sort of work to balance each other and teach us gratitude. They teach us patience. They teach us so many more things. So, keeping that in mind, I find that it helps me to kind of just go with the flow a little bit more. And that's not to say that you shouldn't push for something because, I mean, without pushing for anything, like nothing happens, you know? But it's to say that you should absolutely do that. And while you're doing that, notice all kinds of things around you as you do. Because I feel like it can be pretty insightful, whether that's a lesson that you've learned, whether that's just how something might have gone in one day or 1 hour or whatever it might be. Just be mindful of that. So, yeah, that's my insight going into this. And that's it. Okay, we'll kick off into the first episode. So, the first episode that I noticed a heavier listenership within was an episode I did earlier this year in the spring with my good friend Jagisha. She is so funny and so positive. The episode is called Seeing the Best in Everything. And I think I might be a little bit biased because, again, I think it's a great episode because of her, and I get why more people tuned in. But in a nutshell, Jigisha talks a lot about life, work, dating, and then at the very end of it, we get a little bit into our favorite things like music, TV shows, films, and so forth. And it was just a really fun episode to record. I will say one thing about Jigisha that I kind of already mentioned is that she's very positive. She has this really remarkable tendency to see a positive side to anything. For the most part, I would say, more than maybe anybody else I know, she has a very, very strong willingness to see a positive side to anything. So, talking with her about life in general, whether that's again, work, dating, just day to day, is really special because I feel like it's a reinforcement how different our perspectives can be. And also, as you're going through something, sometimes it's really hard to get out of your perspective and get out of that nutshell of what you're used to seeing and thinking and living, maybe. So I feel like this episode was not only for the both of us fun to record, for me, it was really great and insightful. And I feel like for anyone who listens, it's just a different mindset to sort of explore and get to listen to. So I feel like being able to talk to her again about all this stuff is just like not only insightful, it's just very positive. And I feel like this could work as a reminder for all of us to sometimes take a step back and just like reassess. And I think, especially if you're someone who is very much in the realm of having a busy life or a fast life, maybe as opposed to a slow life or a slower lifestyle, I think this could be a pretty relatable episode for you. Even though someone like her is quite busy, she mentioned so much about the importance of, having your different hobbies, having different interests, and being able to connect with people on those things. So I think that talking about all that with her was really great. And I would 10 out of 10 recommend giving it a listen. Am I biased? Yes. But I still think you would enjoy it. Okay. So that's episode 1. Episode 2, I noticed that you guys were listening to quite a bit, was one called What Does Your Childhood Crush Say About You? This one was one that was very different from any episode I think I've ever done, to be honest. And it was probably one of the more lighthearted episodes that I've done this year, at least. In a rough recap of all of this, I guess, if I could describe this only in maybe a few phrases, the first phrase would be pop magazines. The second phrase would be boy bands. And then the third phrase would be that everything was a much simpler time before we had social media. That's really it. That's the best way I could describe it, I think. And in a point in time where we now have so much access to literally almost anything and anyone, this one just focuses on, I feel like, a more mundane thing and a thing that I used to love doing, either for fun on my own or with friends. But I genuinely think talking about something like this was nostalgic. So, in a nutshell, I talk a lot about pop magazines, like I said. One huge thing that they always had really highlighted and emphasized in there was not only boy bands, like I said. I mean, it was boy bands, but they emphasized this idea of heartthrobs a lot. And with that, we were always given this fun chance to do quizzes. Like they would give us pop quizzes in there. And it was very, almost, I don't know, it was just a very mundane and fun thing to do. And a lot of these quizzes would always be determining your personality type in some way, maybe your style, maybe your favorite type of food, or I don't know what nail polish color would be best suited for you in a specific season. And then my ultimate favorite is who is your top celebrity crush or who is your ultimate crush, something like that. And I think doing a whole episode about this was so much fun. Honestly, while recording this one, it reminded me of so many childhood memories. And it was just overall so wholesome because I remembered the whole era of time where, and I'm sure kids probably still do this stuff, I don't know, but you would get a magazine and they would have either giant posters like folded up and stapled in there, or you would get the regular page size posters of whatever celebrity it was that you liked. And you could just rip that out of the magazine and put it up. So, like in high school, that would be up in my locker, or it'd be up in my room, or wherever. And I just feel like that was such a fun time to think back on now. So, for that one, I would say if you want to feel some sort of nostalgia, and if you grew up in like the 90s or early 2000s, go listen to that. Even if you didn't grow up in that time, go ahead and listen to that because I just really enjoyed that episode and I thought it was a fun one. And I can't lie, I did go on and do some quizzes after that. Now it wasn't so much through magazines. Like I have some still from when I was growing up, very few now versus how many I had then. But I didn't really go through those and do quizzes. I went on to different sites. Like BuzzFeed has a million and one. Some magazine outlets now have those quizzes online. So it was just fun. And also, I feel like as we head into these colder and potentially gloomier months, that might be a fun thing to be able to do. So if you're ever looking for something fun and simple to do to get your mind off of just anything really, go ahead and do that. I feel like it's so much fun. And also, it's just lighthearted and it doesn't hold a lot of weight. I feel like right now and in general, as you get older, it's easy to put a lot of weight on many different things. This is something that you can do that doesn't do that. So I would 10 out of 10 recommend. It's a really fun time. Okay, so those are the first 2 episodes. One episode in particular that you guys really enjoyed was called Anxiety. I feel like if there's something I can talk about without much hesitation, as I've gotten older at least, it's anxiety. And to me, there was no surprises here with this one being maybe more favored or, in like the top listened or the top listened to, I guess is the right way to put that. But I just feel like I can talk maybe a little bit more about this from my own perspective. And now that I'm older, I can talk about how it felt growing up and experiencing these feelings. And I feel like if I can talk about these things with friends and we can relate to one another in some degree, why not be able to share that a little bit? Because maybe somebody else can also relate to it. And that might sound cringy, but it's true. I feel like sharing these sort of things is actually more important than we realize sometimes. I really wanted to share something like this and talk about it from my own perspective. But a lot of what I talk about was thinking about anxiety, including things from high school, for instance, or even from university. I talk about a lot of those different things, maybe some of the potential, I guess, anxiety inducing topics or aspects there were to those times. And I mean, when you're growing up in general, there's going to be different things like bring anxiety for everybody else. I try to sum up some things that maybe I felt, but also have noticed other peers around me have also felt, and maybe friends have also felt. So that's where a lot of that came from. Because again, I tried to consider things that were overall more relatable to not only like myself, but to people around me, people that maybe I had met during those points in times, and just like really thinking back on conversations I've had and even reflecting on times like in class, for instance, doing presentations and stuff. Oh my God, that had a lot of anxiety around it for different reasons for different people. Maybe not for everybody, but there was a general group where a lot of us felt nervous with that. And that carried on into university. So I feel like talking about something like this is important because it's about a feeling that we all have or face at some point in time. And towards the middle to the end of this one, I talk about some of the things that I find pretty helpful for me to function with my anxiety. I always like to emphasize the fact that I fall very easily into the trap sometimes of, being on TikTok and I see a video pop up or on YouTube and a video will pop up and it'll be like, do this to cure your anxiety or do this to stop your anxiety. And now I'm at a point where I'm very content with just knowing that if I can function with it, that's a huge win because there ultimately really isn't a cure or something to stop these things all at once. I mean, maybe for some there is. For me, I'm a firm believer in, hey, there's a way to function with it and to feel better, and that comes above the idea of stopping and canceling something to me as a whole because ultimately that's kind of like erasing some feelings and it's something that we all experience, right? So, and I guess going off of that, there's one lesson I think I've learned that's got me to that point, and it's the whole idea of the fact that anxiety will literally always be there, almost like in your back pocket. But once you learn how to function alongside it, you're pretty golden. Like you're good. It's not to say it won't come up, it won't creep up, it won't be there. It will, but if you learn to almost accept it in a sense and work with it, it just changes your perspective. It changes so much. And that's really, really something that I enjoy learning about and talking about and hearing about. So, yeah, this topic in itself is one I find to be fairly evergreen because it's not new by concept. It's certainly not going to phase out at any point in time, I don't ever think, to be honest, because it's something that will continue to have many different sides to it. So, this episode is one I found to be both a little challenging to record, but also I guess, sort of informing and, to be honest, really important to record. So that's the third one there. I want to focus on one more episode from earlier in the year. Again, I think this was around springtime. This will be the last episode that I recap on. And this one was called Decision Fatigue. This topic, very similar to anxiety, is incredibly evergreen. And I think as time goes on and the world evolves, we are all faced with this abundance of choices. And looking at this in a really physical and literal sense, we are given an array of choices in so many instances. So, for instance, let's say you go grocery shopping and you're looking for a type of apple. I'm saying this because currently I've been really into apples. I don't know, I'm hyper fixated on apples. But let's say you're going to go look for a type of apple and you probably have a few to choose from. So that's already a little challenging. Moving along, let's say you want to pick up a loaf of bread. You then also, in that section, have another handful of options. And then let's say you wanted to move along, you're going throughout the grocery store and you're like, oh, I want to grab a bag of chips just like as a snack. again, you have an entire wall full of choices because there's just so many different options out there just for food alone, right? And I think this episode is kind of like that in a nutshell, and it focuses on how this affects us in our day to day. So, from food to clothing to our living spaces, decision fatigue is something that is there without a doubt. And this episode, I think, talks a little bit about how we can deal with this or make things a little simpler for ourselves. I think, especially since the pandemic and, various other factors, we fall often into this idea of like panic buying or maybe even panic decision making. And sometimes we get into a point where we actually have to make decisions on a whim. But this episode touches more so on day to day decision fatigue and, again, how we can try to slow these things down and make it a little bit simpler for ourselves, even despite all of that. So, yeah, that's some of 2024 throughout trying times, at least. And I can't lie, a lot of these themes were in heavy effect with my personal life too. Anxiety, for sure. Celebrity crushes, they motivate me. Seeing the bright side in everything, I'm really, really trying. I'm having a time trying to do that, okay? And then decision fatigue, that's always there. As much as I try to manage it myself, but I still find myself getting sometimes very overwhelmed. And I think that's just human. It's natural. It is what it is in 2024. And then there's going to be another year. So I feel like a lot of these themes, in all seriousness, though, I will say, maybe not the celebrity crush one so much, are things that we all experience regularly and will more than likely continue to experience because it's just a part of life. But I think there's always ways that we can talk about these things to maybe make them a little bit easier. And in that, I just want to say that I feel very fortunate that I get to share a lot of these thoughts with you and get to chat with you too. Because yeah, it's allowing me to get a lot off my brain and my chest here. So thank you. Now, getting into the stuff that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode about the show changing a little bit next year. Like I said, this is the final episode of this year. You're like, I get it. You've said it 7 times. We know. Next year, I'll be back and things will look a little different. You will be hearing from me every single month, maybe not every couple weeks, but it will be every month. And in those monthly episodes, I'll be doing more of a deep dive into a subject. But I will probably need your help a little bit too. So, as I'm talking about certain subjects, I'm going to want to lean on you guys a little bit more for your insight and your thoughts on certain things and for you to share your experiences as much as you're comfortable, of course. So, I want to know what certain topics and things might mean to you, as I just mentioned. If you want to help out with that, please keep an eye on the Trying Times Instagram and Facebook. Both are the Trying Times podcast. I'll be sharing some links on there soon where you can get involved and help out. So, whether you want to share your voice physically or if you want to just type out an answer, you can do one or the other. And I'm really excited to have this new sort of chapter in Trying Times where you get to be more physically involved. But for now, I can't thank you enough for being here and for listening and chatting with me. I can't believe this show has been alive for 2.5, 3 years now, and we're gonna come back for another year. It's really exciting. And again, thank you so much for being here with me. I hope you have the best holiday season and the rest of 2024. And I'll chat with you in 2025, okay? Bye.